You're listening to the Healing from CPTSD podcast. My name is Justin Vanderwind, and I am your host. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about what you would like to see happen in the coming new year of 2022. If you haven't done so already, be sure to visit our website at healingfromcptsd.com and sign up on our email list for regular updates, a free weekly newsletter, as well as to be the first in line for the launch of the Healing from CPTSD course. All links will be in the description below. All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Healing from CPTSD. My name is Justin Vanderwind, and I am your host. So I hope you guys had a good holiday. If, you celebrate Christmas or whatever you do, I hope it was a good one. I hope you didn't have to deal with, a narcissist or two, or, maybe you were free from that. If you weren't, I'm really sorry, and I know it's just a pain in the butt, to say the least, to deal with those people, My Christmas was all right. My family's kind of, it's a bad family. It's just toxic, right? Nobody's really in contact, So, it was fine. I'm actually in the middle of sort of not only healing from CPTSD, but rebuilding my life, like from the ground up. And that's really what I've spent most of my life doing anyway, because the narcissistic abuse was so, it wasn't just chaotic, but it was so damaging, right? Like it was just so much damage to, psychological damage, emotional damage, but just everything else about how to function in life. And there was so much stuff that just wasn't, taught. And there was other things, that made it difficult for me to function, because I wasn't, because I had to focus on so much toxic dead-end stuff over here, it was time and energy that I wasn't, able to focus on in other areas where I should have been focused on, which is, growing up, and being raised, like, in just a decent way. And, having parents that show you something, right? Something for life, instead of just sort of, I was just traumatized to a point where I was just completely frozen, and I was just frozen, right? Like just frozen, like in a constant state, almost like if you saw that movie Austin Powers, where he's like frozen, they freeze him in ice. That's how I felt emotionally. Like I was just frozen. So like nothing happened, very little happened emotionally. But I did have to kind of figure out what was wrong with my family and to move on from there. And again, as I've mentioned many times before, just finding out what was wrong took so long. It was crazy how long that took. Going to, it wasn't like I was just perusing the libraries, like trying to figure it out all on my own. It was like I was going to the therapist and they weren't able to help me. So so for me, I took a look at my dysfunctional family dynamic. And I realized, it's almost like when you're building a house or a building or something like that, you got to have a solid foundation upon which to build on, right? So I had to, there was not a solid foundation. Everything was all messed up. There was, metaphorically speaking anyway, there was just garbage everywhere. Things were broken. The ground was all messed up. Everything had to be fixed. The foundation had to be fixed. So I've spent most of my life, and some people have said, why aren't you getting on with your life? And it's like, well, I'm trying to, right? I'm rebuilding my foundation, because I want my life to be completely outside of the dynamic of any toxicity or dysfunction whatsoever. Walking away from a toxic person is one thing physically, but extricating yourself and getting out of that dynamic is a whole nother ball game. And so that's what I've spent most of my time in life doing. And I was, delighted to find out, from different therapists who actually know what narcissistic abuse is, that, definitely taking time to heal and to sort of isolate yourself socially is a good idea, if you dealt with a lot of trauma and narcissistic abuse, because you want to heal yourself, but you also want to get yourself to a point where you start attracting healthy people. Like you jump from that unhealthy dynamic sort of energetically, or however it works, up to a higher level. So you're not really, attracting those people anymore. And if you do come across one or two, you can kind of spot them pretty quick and know to just avoid them, So that's what I've been doing. And I got to tell you, it's been a real pain. It's been a lot of work, man, because it was mostly just me. I mean, really all me, like I had a few. The biggest help I've had is from people that wrote books that about this stuff, right? Obviously, Pete Walker's a big one. But I'm finally getting to a place where my foundation is good, and I know how to function and I know how to get out of the toxicity just like energetically, right? And in a real way, and to start, forming a new group of like a new family, like from the ground up, like a complete reboot. And that's coming quick. That's coming soon now, and I can see the light, right? Like after all this time, man, like I really feel like I've been in prison doing some serious time here. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to that, continuing that in the new year. Obviously, this podcast is a big part of that, and the Healing from CPTSD course is a big part of that, in and of itself, as well as my ability to share it with others, to try to get their lives back. So that's pretty much what I've been focused on. And so when it comes to the holidays and stuff like that, yeah, I don't have people right now, but I'm getting to a point. I really enjoyed my me time, by the way. I'm like a master of me time. Like I don't know, some people say they can't be alone. I can do it with ease. I could probably go out into the wilderness just, if I had some survival skills, and just be fine for a long time, So that's kind of where I was. I hope I hope if you had to deal with some dysfunction this holiday, it wasn't too bad, or you were able to at least get out of there, or, nothing too bad happened. But I'm kind of excited. I mean, this is every year. It's kind of like, it's nice to start a new year, right? Because you feel like you can start fresh, start clean, and whatever you've got going on in your life. Maybe, stopping some habits, or, moving to a new place, or doing something new, or changing in some way. I like the feeling, to just start fresh. And so I couldn't be happier to be moving into a new year here with all the tools and sort of insights and experiences that I've had, so that I can, rebuild my life. And I'm almost kind of like done, right? So that feels really good. It feels really good to, be able to have this course launching for 2022. I think 2022 is going to be a pretty good year for me. And there's no reason why it can't also be a good year for you as well. What's interesting is I always forget about this COVID situation, because honestly, when they talk about quarantines and I don't know, isolation or whatever, I've been doing that my entire life. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of sad, but I was a freeze type, right? So I've done an incredible amount of isolation. And so this is like, it's not only, I'm not really even doing anything different. You know what I mean? Like, as far as my life is concerned, I don't have that big of a social life. I don't have any significant others. I'm just working on myself and my growth. I'm a homebody for the most part. I don't really want to be out at bars anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I've kind of done that, been there, done that. So it's interesting. So I'm hoping, so part of me was going to say, I hope we can get back to, quote, normal as far as this virus is concerned, in 2022. But for me, maybe some of you can relate to that. It really didn't, it was like no big deal for me, because I just didn't, it's not negatively impacting my life or changing anything in any way, shape, or form. And that's how I guess I've been self-quarantined my entire life, right? So, eventually, slowly, I'll start like trying to meet healthier people and stuff. But this is a great time to be someone with CPTSD, because it's like, oh, great, we all get to stay home and watch Netflix and like play with the cat. No problem. I can, I'm sure there's enough of us, many of us that can kind of do that. But aside from the virus, I think 2022 is going to be good for me. I think it can be good for you, and you've just got to, you got to be able to sort of take hold of your focus. It really all comes down to your mind, right? Whatever you're doing in your life, and that's where you got to start. Your mind, your mental health. And when I say mental health, I don't just mean like going to a psychiatrist or some kind of medication or whatever. I'm talking like all of it, like, nutrition, giving your body and your brain what it needs to function, and not being around toxic people, because it's horrible for your mental health. I mean, you know this, but there's no way to really get around that as long as you're around toxic people. So, that's one of the biggest reasons why it's so important to get away from those type of people as soon as you possibly can, because your mind, it's almost like you won't be able to, it's like if you need your mind and your focus and your clarity mentally in order to get on with your life, right? Whether it's healing in any other way, if you're constantly focused on what the narcissist is doing or not doing, or constantly stewing in the frustration and the anger and the emotional hurt, all that garbage, that's the game of the narcissist. They want to sort of manipulate your focus to be on them, whether they're around or not, right? And so they're not just, some people are self-destructive and they self-sabotage, but narcissists sabotage other people, right? They're sabotaging you. And so you really got to get your mind back, right? That's the first key. And when you do that, you can focus on whatever you want and take your life wherever you want. So if you want to heal from CPTSD and, be in a completely different kind of life, maybe more friends or, a significant other that's healthy enough for you to be in a healthy relationship, you can do all those things, right? You can move somewhere, you can completely reboot your life, which is what I'm in the process of doing. But, you can do it, but you need your focus, right? So if you can't get away from the narcissist, then at least creating a plan for doing so as soon as you possibly can is the best, the next best thing. And a plan of attack, I think I told you I created a system for for life, from going from ground zero to being totally on your feet. And it made it a lot easier for me to know what to do and stuff like that. I think a lot of people are afraid to leave whatever situation they're in. Maybe they're financially dependent or something. But if you can empower yourself with sort of a guide or a map or tools, and you start to get more self-confidence and your self-esteem starts to raise, it'll be a lot easier. It won't be as scary to even think about leaving. Some people are kind of stuck in the fear of, well, if I leave, what am I going to do? I might have to be homeless or something. And it made me feel better to prepare for that possibility. Because nobody's going to care about you except you. I mean, maybe you have some loved ones in your life who genuinely do love you. I don't have that. I'm one of those people who didn't have, maybe there's a fun aunt or maybe your kids or something. You have somebody. Some of us, there's just a total disaster. There's nobody survived. It's we're just on our own, right? Just at a fundamental level. So you can do it, right? Even if you want to get away from the narcissist and you don't know how, or, you can just take baby steps and put a system together. I'm trying to figure out how to share this. Maybe I'll do a blog post or something. This system I created, because it's helpful. And, I know for me, it was just the overwhelming feeling of not knowing what to do if I wanted to leave or not having a support system or backup or something. Instead of having a support system, you can have a system for support, which is what I did here. And, I hope whatever you're able to do, right? If you're wanting to get away from the narcissist, or if you can't, or whatever is going on, I just want to say that, even you just listening to this right now, in fact, partially it's me making this, although it's about healing and stuff like that from the damage. But, how much time have we spent focused on these people? You know what I mean? How much mental energy have we spent on a narcissist or multiple narcissists, or what they're doing or not doing, or whether they know what they're doing, whatever it is, right? How much more energy and attention are we going to give to these people? I mean, how much more of our time and our life itself is going to be just kind of completely wasted on this person or these people? You know what I mean? So you know that narcissists, just everything's about them. So if you're on the other side of the spectrum, right, which a lot of people would call, codependent, right, which is where I am, it's almost like the complete opposite extreme, where it's you don't focus on yourself at all. You focus on everyone else but you, right? It's another extreme. but it's unhealthy because you're not taking care of yourself in many, and making sure you're around the right people, and you have the right, you're getting your needs met on every level. We abandon ourselves and we're codependent. We try to, quote, help others and save others and fix others and make others happy, so in hopes that they will make us happy, right, in return. That's sort of the subconscious idea behind being, but it's not a healthy situation. And because we don't love ourselves as codependents, generally, unless you've done work on yourself or you're working on yourself, you're just going to attract other unhealthy people, right? That's why they always talk about the sort of classic, duo of the narcissist and the codependent, because the narcissist is nothing but taking and the codependent is nothing but giving. So you're giving all this stuff and it's going into like a black hole. It's a complete waste of time and energy for everyone, yourself included. So you got to focus on yourself, and have like sort of healthy selfishness. You know what I mean? We need to introduce this concept into society more, where, selfishness doesn't, people throw that word out there. And in fact, narcissists have used that. I've heard narcissists say that before. They'll try to tell you you're selfish if you need to do something for yourself, or, and it's confusing because you're like, they're not wrong. It is kind of selfish, I guess, for me to focus on myself. And so it's just another like manipulative tactic for them, right? But the truth is, there is such a thing as healthy selfishness and unhealthy selfishness, right? Like focusing on yourself to the point where it becomes a negative impact on others. Yeah, okay, that's toxic selfishness, or unhealthy selfishness, as I like to call it. But making sure you're focusing on you and getting your needs met, proper nutrition and exercise and whatever you need, listening to your inner self, that's healthy. You need that. And that's the big that's the key issue for codependents like me is, and I've made a lot of progress, but that was the core issue was self-abandonment, which is also a part of CPTSD in and of itself. So, for myself as well as many others, there's like a combo going on. It's like you got the self-abandonment tendencies from CPTSD, you've got the CPTSD itself, and then you've got all these codependent tendencies going on. So it's like even harder than just regular codependency, right? So self-love is the key to all this, right? Like turning your focus within, and really making it a priority to focus on you and your well-being, being more selfish than you ever have been in your life. And it feels a little weird. It feels a little weird at first, but that's how people like us that are having to deal with narcissists and their BS are going to get out of it, not only away from them, but out of that sort of mind control that's going on, right? Where it's like you're just constantly obsessed about them. And again, it's like putting all your focus and energy into a black hole, right? It's just a dead end, right? I mean, how long have we gone around and around and around and around with these people? Years upon years, decades, right? And has it ever led anywhere? You know what I mean? Whether it's a parent or two parents or a husband or wife or something, it's a dead end. You're not going to get anywhere with these people. They're never going to change their behavior. They're never going to turn that leaf. It's never going to happen. So you've got the solution is not focusing on them some more. It's focusing on you, right? And that's what you can do, or start doing in this new year. I mean, maybe you grab a pen and paper or something, a pad of paper, and you write down some stuff that maybe you've been neglecting in your life. You've got many different areas of your life: physical, mental, emotional, personal, financial, spiritual. Just take a look at your whole life and see where you're doing okay and maybe where you're lacking. And you can sort of turn a new leaf in this new year. You can change, right? Instead of worrying about this person. And, I would argue that you can do whatever you want, right? But I would argue that your life is more valuable than anything on the face of this planet, right? Like your life, your time, your energy, your mental focus. So make your well-being a priority, because these people aren't going to do that. The narcissists and pretty much everybody else in the world, right? So learn to be selfish, and you can use this new year coming up to maybe just try to do it a little bit, right? where instead of thinking like if there's plans or some people want to do something, it's like instead of constantly focused on what they want or other people, start to look within. Because for me, I can promise you, I was one of those people that was just like, let's just do whatever everybody else wants to do, right? Making them happy. But I got to the point where I realized there were a lot of things I was doing sort of at the expense of my own well-being. So I got to the point where I was like, there's two people in in any relationship, right? There's them and there's me. So I just started making myself the priority, right? And, if you don't, especially if you have CPTSD, it's like, if you don't want to do something socially, honor that, do what's best for you, do what you feel is best for you. And, speaking of, just taking a lot of me time and not doing a lot of social stuff, I used to get a lot of flack from people for that and sort of put downs, not just from narcissists, but other people too. But, because they're like, oh, you just got to get out there and stuff like that. Well, I have gotten out there and it's never been good. It's always more traumatic. But the truth is they don't know anything about what I'm dealing with, right? They don't know anything about CPTSD. They don't know anything about trauma, let alone complex trauma. So what I needed, right, was healing, right? I needed to be on my own. I needed to be away from toxic and dysfunctional people. And none of those people, I always felt, right, that the people that were saying those things to me couldn't help me anyway. And after I found out about CPTSD, I realized I was right? After I learned about, from therapists and doctors and other professionals who know about narcissistic abuse and CPTSD, and they would recommend taking some time for yourself, because you're also going to be attracting a lot more unhealthy people. You know what I mean? So you got to take that into account. So I was right the entire time. You know what I mean? And my gut was telling me to do things that wasn't, quote, normal for a lot of other people. But the truth is, what I went through and what you went through with narcissistic abuse wasn't normal at all. Right? So these people aren't going to be able to help you. If they don't have any idea, it would have been real nice if someone could just sit down and say, hey, I'm really sorry about, what you're struggling with and what you've had to go through and the incredible amount of just pain and suffering and destruction and really devastation across every level of your being, yeah, let's just sit down and have a cup of tea or, just let's just focus on healing. That's what I needed to do. Not running around trying to impress other people or do whatever people, you know what I mean? And I was right. So always trust your gut instinct, and by focusing more on your gut instinct, you'll strengthen your connection to it, which was specifically sort of severed. You can't sever it completely, but the relationship between you and your inner self is what the narcissist sought to destabilize and sort of destroy in and of itself, right? So that you become more psychologically and emotionally dependent on them, and you might even believe their BS, their narratives and all the smear campaigns and everything, if you're weak-minded enough, right? Like, I guess. I've seen that happen to people, in my family, and some people, actually believe these things. So I was always in trouble because I was trusting my instincts. Odd, huh? So, those of us who had to go through narcissistic abuse, we lived in our worlds were completely reversed, it flipped upside down from a lot of other, quote, normal people. People say there's no such thing as normal, but there is a such thing as families who don't have narcissistic abuse going on. I think, yeah. I think normal does exist. Normal being reasonably stable, healthy, psychologically, emotionally healthy people that can function well in society. Yes, that's real. That exists. Some of us have just had to live with so much dysfunction and toxicity and abuse that we don't even think, we've never seen anything different. I've seen it. They're out there. And we can join them. That's my goal. And so, because we spend so much time, I say I'm talking people with CPTSD, especially if it's your family that you're trying to struggle with or some significant other, you want them to change so that you don't have to leave them. But there comes a point where you begin to realize there's other people out there that are already where you want to be, right? So you don't have to fight with these people over here anymore to change. You can just leave them to, stew in the toxicity of their life, and go be with people who want solutions and healing and to laugh and have fun, and who are healthy people. You just go to a new land, right, where people are healthy, and you can do it. You can do it. And this course I'm putting together here, I'm making sure to include how to sort of raise your own inner social vibration, so to speak. So you can do that, right? We kind of discussed that in the last episode. So you can work on yourself and know how to, become healthier in yourself, emotionally, psychologically, and then you'll start to attract other people, sort of making a science out of it. So, just think about some of this stuff and think about, where you want the new year to go, because you can take it wherever you want. I mean, I know a lot of us think, like, we've had times, maybe this is you right now, where you just feel completely helpless and hopeless and just sort of like in this darkness. Maybe nobody likes you, or you're just surrounded by so many nasty people that you don't even know what to do, right? But I can tell you that you can, and this is why it's so important to take your mind back ASAP with proper nutrition, proper focus. Because again, look at the subtlety. Like when you're focused on the narcissist, you're focused on the narcissist, whether it's directly or indirectly. You want to focus on what you want rather than what you don't want, right? Because if you don't, that's what's going to keep you stuck. So, obviously it's hard to do when you're around someone like that, because if you're not focused on them, they'll start yelling and screaming like a 3-year-old until you or banging pots and pans or doing whatever kind of manipulative tactic they have to in order to get your attention onto them, right? So they've stolen enough from you. So what do you think? Like, is this new year going to be a time where you at least, point yourself in the direction of taking your life back from these people? By the way, I told you before, I'm kind of like out of the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses of CPTSD, where if you're not familiar with that, the fighters are the ones who kind of like fight back. They've got some fire in them, and they'll resist the narcissist abuse and stuff. The freeze types are the people that just kind of like freeze in the trauma, which I've got both that going on, fight and freeze. The fawns are like the more codependent, kind of extreme codependence of just being like a complete doormat and just trying to completely please the narcissist all the time in hopes that they'll stop. And what was the other one? Flight? Yeah, that's just running, just getting out of there. So fighting and freezing. So some of you may not have that same fight in you. Some of us do. I'm telling you right now, like, do whatever you got to do to tap into that inner fighter. Right. And when I say fight, I don't necessarily mean physically fighting someone. I'm talking about that fire to fight for your life. Right. Like, because if you're feeling hopeless, right, if you're just kind of like laying in bed or something, or you're just on the couch and you're just kind of like lost in that ocean of hopelessness, you gotta like fight. You gotta fight that feeling, and you gotta fight that sort of like inner fog to get your life back. No one's gonna do it for you but you. I don't care if it's, that really applies to everybody, but it really applies, more importantly to people that have been through extreme trauma and don't have a solid support system to fall back on, right? So fight for you, like fight. If you have to stand up against an army of people, which you pretty much have. If you've grown up with narcissists, or you've dealt with narcissists and flying monkeys, whether it's family or otherwise, you've definitely stood up against, you've had to stand up against like a group of people, like a little militia of little fighting people that you were under attack on a regular basis. So you got to fight for your right to live, right? Forget about fighting for your right to party. We'll get on. That comes later. You got to fight for what you want, right? And learn like not just assertiveness, like verbally, right? Just a verbal assertiveness, but asserting your own mind and your own willpower into your own life to do what you want to do, to go where you want to go. Even if you don't know how you're going to get there, you can go wherever you want. You can do whatever you want even though you struggle with CPTSD, including overcoming CPTSD. I can do things now that I used to never be able to do. You know, I feel so much better. Like once I learned how to self-soothe and like actually practice self-love. I mean, self-love, when I first heard it, I was like, that's kind of silly, you know? Like, what does that mean? Like I take myself out for some ice cream or something. And yeah, that's part of it, right? Like just doing something that's nice for you. And the saddest part about my thought process of it being silly was that the reason I thought it was silly was because no one ever did that to me. Like I was always treated like garbage, like I didn't have value, right? I was always treated like I didn't have value. So why would I love myself if I didn't have value? But that was a lie, right? I did have value. We all have value, but we've got to value ourselves, right? So yeah, take some time, go do something for you, right? Even if you have kids or something, yeah, you got responsibilities, but just take a little time for you, right? So that's how you can start practicing self-love, right? Even if it's just like one little thing a week, right? Where you make some goals for yourself, just little goals, tiny baby step goals. You can just make one goal. This week, I'm going to do something just that I like to do. Maybe you go see a movie by yourself or something. Maybe you specifically practice a little like self-love and healthy selfishness and just do something for you. Like, you know what I mean? Because society, forget about the narcissist taking your attention. All of society, the media, the governments, the businesses, the bank, like everybody, they all want your attention and your energy. So, but what are they giving back to you, right? So you got, if you don't focus on yourself, nobody else is going to. So make yourself a priority, make your life a priority, and get away from these people. I mean, just mentally, like enough is enough, fight for yourself. And the people that can't leave, my opinion is what you do is not just leave, but you A, create a plan of how you're going to function, and B, you tap into your fighter. You got to tap into that inner will to live, right? And that's that, it's kind of like how fighters are. They've got that fire within them, like, this energy. Don't be afraid to tap into that. I promise you. Being having CPTSD and dealing with narcissists is horrible, but I had to become like, I was like trained as a fighter almost, and it's weird because if you see me, I look like maybe a little bit of a fawn, right? Because I have a fair complexion. And I'm kind of jolly. I like to laugh. I'm like a big bear, kind of, right? But if there are certain situations that arise, I have an inner fighter, and that fighter was honed by being under constant attack and having to be on guard all the time, and it's not good, right? What I had to go through and what you had to go through, but the fighter in there inside me is I'm glad I had that. You know what I mean? Because that was all I had to go on, right? And if you don't feel like you have an inner fire, watch some stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe watch a movie or find some character in a book or a show or something that kind of inspires you and gives you that like fight. You know what I mean? I'll share with you who mine is. You might laugh because you might think it's kind of silly, but mine is Batman. I love Batman. I love comics, but Batman, for those of you who like Batman, there's a reason so many people like Batman. He's cool. He can do a lot of good stuff, but, he's just a guy, right? Like, he doesn't have superpowers, but more importantly, and why I resonated with it so much with that character is that everything about him, every aspect of his life was shaped by extreme trauma, one extreme traumatic event, right? And that's what the Batman stories are all about. It's like childhood trauma, and other villains and characters. They all have their own trauma that they're dealing with, right? And, it's sort of a comic book world's exploration of how different people, deal with trauma. And Batman, I just felt like, he's like a loner, right? He's got to be like, but he's tough, and sometimes he puts on a mask, right? Which is really Bruce Wayne. So, I dug all that stuff. I'm sure there's probably some of you that really like the whole superhero thing because of that anyway. Like, having a part of you that's kind of like your true self on the inside that and then sort of who everyone else sees you as. And, but, he really, I don't know, it just kind of helped me to like, because he was like an orphan, right? Like he lost his parents, and my parents weren't dead like physically; they were around. But it's kind of the same, on an emotional level. I didn't really have like parents, right? Like they kind of died for me a long time ago. I had to kind of figure everything out on my own, as far as how life works and how to heal and how to, you know what I mean? So just thinking about him, like whether it's a movie or reading a comic or something, I know it might seem silly, but he gave me some fire, like, and other movies too, like, martial arts movies or just different, just any story where there's like a hero, right? Like some kind of hero that overcomes incredible odds, both inwardly and outwardly, and like overcomes everything and becomes like a hero. It's like, it inspired me to be like a hero in my own life, not with a cape on or anything, not like solving crimes, but for me, right? Like to be a hero in my own life. So I think it's a cool way to look at it, and I think that's probably why so many people like superheroes and heroes and stories like that, because it shows you that it can be done, right? Like you can, whatever you're going through, you can overcome it. And it will also make you stronger as a result. So, whatever you got to do to find that inner fighter, to take your life back, take your mind and your focus back from the narcissist, and to put it wherever you want. I mean, my favorite thing, I swear to you, like my number one go-to, no matter what's going on or what the problem is or where I am, is to just grab some paper and a pen and just write down like where I am and where I want to go, right? Like what I want to do next or what my goals are. You don't have to do a whole list of goals if you don't want to, but just to have an idea. And what's cool about doing that is, like, if you think about it, if you have an idea of something you want to do or achieve and you write it down, you've already brought it into sort of like physical manifestation, just with the simple act of just writing it down, because it's now out of your mind and in the real world on paper, right? And I don't know what it is, or I don't know how the mind works or the universe or whatever, but everyone says, like every successful person says, every success coach and everything, that writing your goals down or just writing things down, you're like, wait, you're the odds of you accomplishing those goals are like through the roof, rather than just thinking about it, right? So even if you don't know how to get out of it, it's like, all right, this year I want to take my mind back. This is where I'd like my life to be, even if I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to get there. It's weird, man. They say knock and the door shall be opened, right? Well, part of that knocking is where your focus is. So anyway, we're going to have a great year. I'm glad there's so many of you like listening to this podcast, and I'm really enjoying, putting everything together here, the website and more content and stuff like that. And it'll be like a little home. And you're not alone, right? So anyway, why don't you go ahead and write down some goals for the new year? Why not? I mean, it doesn't have to be losing weight. Everyone does that. I mean, I think for us, we should. You can do whatever you want, obviously, but I don't know. I kind of prefer focusing on doing nice things for yourself, learning to love yourself more, and learning to value yourself enough to not tolerate any kind of abusive, toxic, behavior from anybody. You don't have you don't have to do that, by the way. Your parents, especially if you have parents, they have this like mental hold over you, like you've just got to do and whatever they want, or allow them to treat you however you want because they're your parent or something. That's totally BS. It's wrong. So anyway, I would say make yourself the focus in this new year, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.